Thanks, Danny. I got the thumbs up. We're good to go here. So we start this morning with the public hearing, and I'll start with the public hearing address and the introduction. I'm Mark Pendergraft, and I'll be chairing the public hearing this morning. This is a public hearing for proposed regional district of Okanagan-Smilkameen bylaw 2497. 2023 and 2498.27 2023. The proposed bylaws and related information, including written comments received to date, are available for review at the head table. At this public hearing, all persons wishing to speak will be given an opportunity to do so and are asked to commence their remarks by stating their name and address. Written comments may be submitted to the head table before closure of this hearing. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing is asked to do one of the following. If you are participating by a computer, please click the raise hand button, which can be found in the participants panel on the right-hand side of your computer screen. This will indicate that you wish to speak. If you are participating by a phone, please press *3 on your phone's keypad. This will also indicate that you wish to speak. Having indicated that you wish to speak, you will then be placed in a queue until you are invited to speak. All speakers will be restricted to a time limit of 5 minutes until everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity to do so. Anyone wishing to speak a second time may do so by following the same protocol of selecting the raise hand button on your computer or by pressing *3 on your phone's keypad. To submit written comments, please email them to planning@rdos.bc.ca prior to the close of this public hearing. I will now ask Ben Kent, Planner 2, to outline the specifics of the proposed bylaws. Go ahead, please, Ben. Go ahead, please, Ben.
Okay, just wait a moment while the PowerPoint loads up. Might just get started without the PowerPoint for now. Okay, so this morning's public hearing is for a proposed official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment in electoral area H. And the application file number for this is H 2023.009-zone. The subject property for the proposed amendments is listed as 551 Unnamed Road. My understanding is that that's not an official civic address. The district lot, official legal description is 1195. And it's located approximately 1.5 kilometers northeast of Eastgate along Highway 3. The property is currently split zoned. So the official community plan designation on this is part tourist commercial and part resource area. And the zoning on this correspondingly is tourist commercial and resource area. The proposed amendments are to facilitate a subdivision proposal that is currently in stream with the regional district. The amendments are required to reduce the minimum parcel size for subdivision. So this is a proposed 1 lot and 2 remainder subdivision proposal. It will create 1 new legal lot, and it will involve some boundary adjustments with 2 adjacent parcels. The requirement is due to the fact that the resource area portion of this parcel that is proposed to be the new remainder parcel is currently 13 hectares, which is less than the required 60 hectare minimum parcel size for subdivision in the resource area zone. So the proposal involves changing the official community plan designation and the zoning of this parcel from resource area to large holdings 2. And there is also a site-specific zoning provision proposed to allow for a 0.2 hectare hooked portion that straddles the opposite side of Highway 3.
Thank you, Ben. I will now declare this public hearing open and ask if there is anyone who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaws. If there's anybody online, I'm seeing nobody in the room here, so anybody online who wishes to speak, please press your raise hand button. I'll ask for a second time. Is there anybody who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaws? Am I missing anybody, Danny, that you're seeing? Okay. I'll ask for a third and final time and remind folks this is their opportunity to propose any or to present anything. It needs to be emailed in before I close this public hearing. For the third and final time, seeing no hands, I will hereby declare the public hearing closed at 9:11. And thank you everybody for your patience on that. We move straight into planning and development, and I will go to Director Knodel, who's with us in the room today. So you're not? I can see. Where is Director Wiebe? Are you got your up and ready to go? He hasn't got his computer functioning. So can you manage to chair this one? Or do you have it? Or I can. You've got it? Go ahead, Director Wiebe. Short notice, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. So call the meeting to order at 9:10 and ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Move on to the 2018 to 2022 regional snapshot and CAO, please.
Thank you, Director. So once regional district strategy is adopted, the Local Government Act requires that an ongoing monitoring be established and a progress report be brought back to the board. However, under the Local Government Act, these reports should be produced annually, but because of high staff turnover in the regional district for the planning department, we weren't able to do it, so this will be one of the first ones. Ironically, the staff member who helped prepare this report is no longer with us, but she has graciously offered to help with this report, and I'll pass that over to staff because the staff is here to answer questions.
So I'll just jump in before I turn over to Fiona. She does have a PowerPoint, and yeah, as the CAO indicated, it is a 5-year report. We are playing a bit of catch-up. Staff turnover, work volumes, also the ongoing RGS review. We're hoping to update our indicators that we use for the snapshot. But we're very happy to at least now have stats for you up until the end of 2022, I believe. So I'm a little sweaty after that last presentation. The PowerPoint didn't get up, so I'm hopeful that we can get Fiona's to work for this one. And I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, and good morning, directors, and Happy New Year. So as the CAO mentioned today, I'm here to present to you a summary of the 2018 to 2022 Regional Growth Strategy Snapshot Report. And just as a reminder, the Regional Growth Strategy includes facilities. So this report will cover.
This is no.
We're still here, Fiona, if you're able to keep
Can
going.
you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, I will carry on. So next slide, please, Danny. So as the CAO mentioned as well, under the Local Government Act, once a regional district has adopted a regional growth strategy, they must establish a monitoring program and prepare an annual report to measure progress on the RGS's goals. And as we were a few years behind, we made the decision to do a combined one to get us up to date and be able to produce annual reports from here forward, hopefully. So the regional district snapshot consists of 16 monitoring based on the 7 goal areas of the regional growth strategy. Each indicator includes a description of what is being measured, why it's important, and a discussion of the trends. And over time, these indicators will hopefully help to identify progress being made towards regional growth strategy implementation or alert us to any changes or improvements that we should be making so that we can see some progress on these goals. Next slide, please. And now for each indicator, we have summarized it at the beginning of each section to indicate how we were doing at a glance using these 3 symbols. So the green arrow indicating if we're doing well on that indicator, moving towards the target goals. Blue equal sign indicating no change. And then the red arrow indicating that we're moving away from the
Man. Sorry, Fiona, you're
I'll
cutting in
just-
and out on us. Do you need the next slide?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So just a few assumptions and qualifiers before we get into the indicators. Wherever possible, indicators were initially selected such that data would be available on an annual basis. However, this is not always possible. So in particular, because a lot of the indicators do use census data, which is only available every 5 years. In this instance, we use the 2021 census data for the population data indicators. And it's also important to note that changes in year-to-year performance do not always equate to a positive or negative. It may take many years of data to reliably identify a clear trend. So the 2018 to 2022 snapshot provides longer-term trends as well as the annual difference between the previous year's data collection, wherever possible, as that was the goal of these snapshot reports, is to have annual review. And one final qualifier is that as this report covers 2018 to 2022, several of the indicators did experience impacts due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which may have skewed them from their regular trends. Next slide, please, Danny. So now on to the indicators. So as I mentioned, these 16 indicators are divided into 7 sections, which represent the 7 goal areas of the regional growth strategy. And I'm not going to touch on all 16 indicators, but we'll speak to 1 or 2 of the indicators from each. Here are the broad goals for housing and development, the first being median house price. Home prices increased 43.4% between 2018 and 2022, with electoral area D experiencing the greatest increase in median home price since 2018. And as of March 2022, electoral area E has the highest median home price in the South Okanagan RGS area. Next slide, please. Next one is housing starts by type. So this indicator measures the number of units by housing type based on building permit details. So only 56.6% of new dwellings were single family, which represents a decrease in comparison to the 2017 snapshot report, which is the last one that we produced, where 43% of new dwellings were single family dwellings. And looking at
She's back.
Oh, she. I mean, for the benefit of the board, unfortunately, I'm wholly dependent on Fiona for this presentation. I'm not able to step in. So, given the technical issues, yeah, I don't know if we want to continue with the presentation or if we get her back, maybe we just cut to questions. And I'm just concerned about losing her again with the connectivity. So.
Oh, right. Can we defer this to the next meeting? Like, there's nothing time sensitive or anything involved, and I don't believe.
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead, Chris.
As a
Mr.
CAO
Parrish.
indicated, I'm not up to speed on the snapshot, and Fiona's last day with us is today. So we'd have to take somebody off a different file to get them up to speed on the snapshot in order to bring it back and present it again to the board.
So can we defer to later in the meeting? Can we defer
To change then. Yep. If Danny can, even if she can log in with the phone and, okay, maybe we'll just give it a moment then and. Agenda.
sorry about that. Am I back again?
Yes, you are, and thank you.
Ah.
Please continue.
Thank you. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. Let me just find my spot again. So the, the next indicator falls under the category for ecosystems, natural areas, and parks. This indicator measures average daily water consumption. And for this indicator, I looked at the 10 different water systems throughout the region. And overall, consumption increased since the 2017 snapshot. Annual per person consumption was 1,540 liters per day per person, which represents a 137 liter increase per day per person in comparison to the 2017 report. Which results in, for this indicator, we've given it the red arrow indicating that we're moving away from our goals. Next slide, please. This next one falls under the category of infrastructure and transportation. And for this goal, we look at annual bus ridership. And overall ridership in the region increased in comparison to 2016 and 2017, where ridership overall didn't change. And this increase is in spite of an abrupt dip in ridership that occurred in March 2020 due to the COVID pandemic and guidance from BC provincial health officers to limit non-essential travel. And just an added tidbit that overall, the main mode of commuting in the region is by automobile at 78%. Next slide, please. So for this fourth goal, it falls under health and safety, with the goal of fostering healthy, safe communities that provide accessible recreational education and cultural opportunities for all residents, and looks at different health indicators, and as well looks at crime rates. So for the slide, I'm highlighting the crime rates, and overall, overall for annual crime rates per 1,000 residents. This data would be including criminal code offenses, but excludes traffic offenses. And we continue to rank poorly, with crime rates in the region continuing to rise. Next slide, please. Under the Regional Economic Development Goals section, we look at the number of businesses with employees. So this means businesses that employ more than just one person, so more than just the business owner, essentially. And BC statistics data shows an increase of 4% in the number of businesses with employees between 2018 and 2022, which is a decrease of 2% since 2017, but it does appear that when looking at the larger trends, that 2017 may be an outlier year, and that overall we're moving in the right direction. Next slide. The second to last goal area is engagement and collaboration. And for this indicator, it was a new indicator that was introduced as part of the 2016 RDS review, and it was intended to be a regional survey on engagement and collaboration for member municipalities and community members and regional district directors. However, this survey has not yet been developed, and since it was introduced in 2016, and maybe something to look at in the future, as either we need to develop the survey or determine an alternate way to assess this goal. Next slide, please. Lastly, the last goal of the RGS is energy emissions and climate change. And one of the indicators under this section looks at the average residential energy consumption in the region. Overall consumption appears to have increased from 2016 to 2021, resulting in a ranking of poor for this indicator. And data for this indicator was obtained from the regional district's community services staff, who have created a RDOS community greenhouse gas inventory. And I understand that this inventory report has not yet been posted publicly, but should be made available publicly soon. Next slide. And just finally, for some next steps, we will be posting the final report on our RGS monitoring webpage, which already has all of our previous year reports. And lastly, as the RGS does cover the South Okanagan member municipalities, we would be distributing copies of the report to the member municipalities as well. And just a final comment, I just want to thank the member municipality planning and GIS staff and the other RDOS staff from various different departments who assisted me in putting together this report, as it's a lot of data from lots of different sources. So thank you. And sorry again for the technical difficulties.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. Is there any questions? Yep, Director Holmes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Fiona. So I find it a little difficult when we compare 2021 numbers with 2022 numbers, because there can be so much change from year to year. So, so for example, with the annual water use per capita, you know, water use we know changes year to year quite a bit. So I'm wondering if on the chart, if you would know which of those of the 11 here, which ones are from 2021 and which ones are from 2022?
So any of the RDOS water systems would be 2021 data, and then the member municipalities, they had their 2022 reports available.
Okay. Thanks.
Director Bloomfield.
Thank you. And staying on the annual water use consumption, those numbers, I'm assuming, well, maybe I shouldn't assume, but do they include agricultural use? And is that factored into the total use and then divided by per capita?
Yes, it's the second option that you said, divided by per capita and factored in.
But it includes agricultural use, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Yep, Director Taylor.
Yeah, I just want to flag the challenge we are dealing with in Okanagan Falls Area D. Our house prices, by your data, have just slightly more than doubled in 4 years, and our average house price is now 50% higher than Penticton's. And I think it, for me, reflects the fact that it's difficult as a community to build anything there, because in order to get grants, we have to qualify the whole RDOS for the grant and then be recognized as your priority. And it's just challenging to get a grant through RDOS for Okanagan Falls. And I think these housing stats show in part the impact of that we have no social housing. And it's challenging. I'm pretty sure our average income is comparable or maybe less to Penticton's, I don't know, but comparable. And, you know, our house prices have just taken a huge schwack, and we have nothing coming in at the lower end. Okay, that's the issue. So, enough said. Thank you.
Move on to Director Holmes.
Sounds like OK Falls should maybe incorporate.
In the meantime.
I always kind of take a comparison between housing prices with a bit of a grain of salt. Summerland is always higher than Penticton, but I think the main reason for that is because we have a lot more lakefront properties than Penticton does, and if you're on the lake, you know, that's a lot more. So it kind of skews these averages. Just back to the water, I think this will be interesting information for the OBWB, I think, and I know they are doing, I believe they're doing a study, right, on water use throughout the region. And for me, what's curious is water that's metered and not metered. And I think you could draw a lot out of these stats about, you could, just by looking at the stats, you can figure out who's metered and who's not, so.
Thank you. Director Spencer Coyne. And
yeah, I think one of the problems is with OK Falls getting those grants is that there's been a reluctancy at the granting level to give rural areas grants for public housing. And it's not just like OK Falls because you're not incorporated, but I think it's because they seem to only go to incorporated areas. I don't like, it's frustrating as heck, but I think you're on the right track. I'm not part of the RGS and I don't really understand all of it. How do you guys like pick and choose like where you're going to have growth areas, where you're not going to have growth areas? Because it seems kind of, I don't know. To me, it's frustrating as hell watching it. And it's like, well, that's not a growth area. And it's like, well, obviously it is because that's where people want to build. Thanks.
Sounds like a question for you, Mr. Garish, or I would think probably.
I mean, I was only peripherally involved with the RGS when it was being drafted and adopted, but I stand to be corrected by directors who were here at the time, but I recall it being basically a political process, and that directors in the electoral areas nominated communities that they wanted to either see designated as a primary growth area or more commonly the rural growth area.
So with that being said, is there a way to take growth areas out or add growth areas? Like, how do you do that? Because we've heard it, yeah, but not always. I hear around this table lots where people are like, this is a growth area, and it's like, well, we don't want it to be a growth area, but it's still a growth area, and there's still development happening. And like, how do you navigate that if it's just a political appointment?
Well, Director Bloomfield wanted to make a comment.
Yeah.
I find this whole thing fascinating.
I think it leads into the question that do we deal with growth as a region? And if we deal with growth as a region, and so we allow for increased growth in certain areas but not in other areas, which it would appear that some around the table would prefer. But that leads into servicing that growth and how we deal with that. And do we, the servicing of the growth should be a regional approach rather than individual approach for the different municipalities and the different areas. If some areas want to opt out of growth, that's okay, but as long as they're contributing towards the growth in other areas within the region, then we can say that we're acting as a region. And I'm just, a question maybe for staff is, in the grant processes for the, I think it's the Growing Communities Funds, that those grants are just being awarded now. Is the regional district getting any funds from that grant to help with the growth rate within the region?
Maybe CAO?
I've been hearing that local governments have been getting notified that they've got grants. We as a regional district have not as of this point. If I also may add, you're talking about growth. I do have the non-market growth numbers for 2023, and it's all relevant. For instance, electoral area B had the highest, 5.35. That sounds like a large number, but that doesn't have to be a large number of new properties, houses, because it all depends on the starting point. But as far as actual assessment, non-market growth goes, I believe Naramata for the third consecutive year is the number one for non-market growth. It is 3.74, but that is a lot more property and assessments and additional to taxes that spread out more evenly. So I think as far as growth goes, it's where the developers want to build. And one of the disadvantages regional districts have is that we don't have the ability to zone a supportive housing areas where the municipalities do. For instance, Penticton has 5, which helps developers want to build in that certain areas. And that's something that I see as a goal for the regional district, to try to have the authority to zone for development.
Director Gittins, I believe you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a follow-up to the taking out a growth area as well. So Greta Ranch was a growth area, so up between Summerland and Peachland. And my understanding from my predecessor was that was back in the day when Penticton was sort of positioning itself as a bedroom community to Kelowna. So they thought when more people might want to grow there. So that's since been removed as we Penticton sort of changed their focus. It was long term. I don't know exactly how and when, but I thought that was a good example of one that was in and one was out. The other thing too about the water meters, I think West Bench is just such a great example of how impactful water meters are, and how many leaks have been determined and found through a water meter system, which is huge, especially since we're on a more of a hazardous land. And the Falder one is so low, and they're not metered. They actually pay a parcel tax, which is a little bit unique, but it's so ingrained with the people that have lived there for a long time, how scarce and how much they need to manage that water. So I'm a big proponent for water meters for sure. I think they've made an excellent impact, especially in West Bench.
We'll go to Director Fedrigo, and then I have a hand Monteith, and then Taylor.
I'm struggling a little bit with when we talk about growth, because are we talking about growth in terms of population, or are we talking growth in terms of housing? Because again, as the CAO has pointed out, Naramata third year, we're growth, but that's housing. Our population has not grown. So when we're talking about that growth and where developers are going, we're talking potentially empty homes, secondary homes, vacation rentals for being built for those purposes. So when we talk about growth in our area, we need to really narrow down what that looks like. And if we're looking at population growth, then Naramata may as well stay rural residential, because we're not growing by people, we're growing by houses. So when we start to have our broader RGS conversation, then I think we need to narrow that down.
Thank you. And Director Monteith?
Thank you, through the chair. Also, just to add to that, also communities that don't have infrastructure, like we have an irrigation district that is saying they do not have capacity for more hookups. We have no sewer. We have septics on the waterfront. That's not good for the water system. So those are the things we also need to consider, is actually how communities are serviced. I actually, to the CAO, I would like to actually hear the numbers for the non-market growth for all the electoral areas.
Too late right now? Guess I can. I don't want to leave out the local governments, so I'll start off with Penticton is 1.05, Summerland 1.77, Princeton 0.86, Oliver 1.44, Osoyoos 1.21, Kiramias 1.07, electoral area A 2.58, a B 5.35, C 1.60, D 0.99, E 3.74, F is 1.54, G 1.41, H 2.10, and I 1.30.
Right, Director Monteith?
And through the chair, can you just explain what the non-market growth actually means? Because there is confusion in the communities.
So it is houses, property assessments. That is where on 1 year you had empty lots, and that lot may be worth $200,000. We tax on that $200,000. The next year, there's a property on it, and it's $500,000. So now we tax on the value of the property and the land. So you're spreading out the tax amount a little bit over a larger area. So what's been happening in the past, as far as the regional district's concerned, is you've been told tax increases is now 6%. Well, non-market growth was never taken into account because that 6% is based on the old assessment, but now you have more assessment to tax on, so that, let's say your non-market growth was 2%, it would be, actually your taxes is now 4% increase. Does that explain it?
I believe, I'll follow up, okay? Yep, Director Coyne.
So if there's a correction in the assessments, will that bring those non-market down?
In the correction for assessment, that would, if you're talking about previous assessment where the property wasn't there before, that won't affect it. What will affect it is, so this is actually the true 2024 numbers. We actually got them Saturday, where we were originally told that we're not going to get them until February. However, there's a point of appeal where certain properties are actually assessed higher, and this is a non-market growth section. So the assessments then change, and which will change the redistribution of each of the electoral areas and local governments, what they pay. But as far as the non-market growth section is, that won't change. One of the things, the advantages that municipalities have over regional districts is if there's a material increase in the assessments for residential, that means that they're paying a higher portion of the taxes, and the benefit is derived through the businesses. Municipalities review when this happens, and I can too, but I don't have the authority, or the new CFO doesn't have the authority to adjust the tax multiplier. So there's an even tax from year to year in municipalities, but not for us. So it's not fair, and one of the things that we're trying to do is, one of the things that I'm trying to do is see if we can have the authority to change that, which isn't going to be easy, but we're not going to get a yes unless we ask.
Now, Director McCord, did you have something specific to this, or was it a follow-up question for something? Okay, and then Director Taylor.
Regional growth. I'm just thinking, remembering back when I was on the OCP review for the Area A, one of the things that we looked at, or several things, when we were advising people where to have growth, was, is it close to schools, transportation, shops? So we tended to recommend doing it in central areas where people could afford to walk or ride a bike or something like that. So those are all kinds of things. At the head of the lake in the Willow Beach campground was originally thought of as a growth area. However, we're not happy with that, and I think it's been taken off, but I'm not sure whether it's still on there or not. It's been talked about. But the problem is, you'd have to have a car to be there. There are no stores there. There are no services. And so why would you want that as a regional growth area when you don't have the facilities? And the fact, and the fact that we're being told that certainly in municipalities, and I'm assuming in other areas too, that we have to have our zoning bylaws updated by June, and we have to allow, buildings and homes and so on to be built without having the infrastructure in place is going to be pretty tricky. And I think that we're going to see a lot more talk about this over the next year. Thanks, Chair.
I think Director Taylor, you've been very patient. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, if Director McGorduff would prefer, she can recognize Okanagan Falls as an incorporated growth strategy area as opposed to the head of the lake. I just want to quickly flag water use, that graph. We need to be careful. I'm all in favor of water meters. I think that's the way to go. But, Sun Valley, clearly an outlier in that graph. But, it's like, I don't know whether it's 25 or 40 sites. So it's a very small system. They are almost all vineyards, and they're not 2-acre vineyards. They're, reasonably sized vineyards. So, let's just be a little careful there, and still go with water meters. And just to the growth piece, I hope we give consideration to some regional-wide policies, because what we're seeing in Naramata with empty houses, I would hate to see that duplicated in other outliers around Penticton, just because Penticton adopts one version of a, what do you call them, short-term accommodations, and the rest of the region around it does not. And so you see all those things pushed out into the neighborhood. So I think, yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion on regional growth strategy, and I see value in giving consideration to regional policies.
Mr. Garish, please.
Sure, just a point of clarification, more of a reminder for the committee. So we do have an RGS review. The legislation requires that the board consider it every 5 years. Unfortunately, this current one has been going on since the last 5-year consideration in 2020. And so it is incomplete. And so at the moment, OK Falls is the primary growth area, but Anarchist, Willow Beach, Greta Ranch, Naramata, Cleedon are all still rural growth areas. We have put proposals to the board in relation to changing those designations to better clarify what happens in terms of development in the rural areas. And the last direction we had from the board was to remove Cleedon and Naramata as village settlement areas. We're working on amendments to that, which we want to bring back hopefully in the next couple months for the board's consideration. But I'll also mention too that Bill 44, while not amending the regional growth strategy section of the act, did introduce this concept of an urban containment boundary, which is what the board is tying those zoning changes to in terms of allowing additional density to occur in places. So we have to try to figure out how that now relates to our RGS, which doesn't use that language, right? It doesn't distinguish if a rural growth area constitutes an urban containment boundary in the context of the act now. So that'll be another question for you to consider when we come back.
Any further comments, questions? Now, I should have a motion to receive the report. Is that, I don't have that in my notes here, and I don't know, we don't do that? Very good. Okay, thank you. Okay. So unless there's anything else, call for a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:45. Motion and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries, and thank you.
Thank you, Director Wiebe. Next up is Environment and Infrastructure, and I go to Director Taylor for that one.
Wondering, as we have a speaker presenter who's the primary purpose of and the only purpose of our agenda, until that individual gets in the room, I don't see much point in us starting.
Are they here? Do we know?
I haven't got an indication that Lauren has arrived yet, so we could either take a quick break or we
Take
could switch corporate and environment, whichever you choose.
Probably take the quick 10-minute break. I think this one was scheduled for 10 o'clock anyway, so let's take the break now and
Same if my sugar goes too low. Same. Feels like you're drunk. Either or. It doesn't go low very often. Struggle with this. Get high. Don't get it too high.
They let people reapply for a liquor license, and they got denied. Because Okanagan Falls has too many, we got the one in Twin Lakes, and Penticton's too close.
Yeah, and I'm not on.
They can't have sales because they can't get a liquor.
I'm not on like medication, so I have to do it all with my diet. So I gotta be super careful how. Yeah, I gotta go buy some new batteries.
Yeah. So they built a winery that can't sell.
If you could tell a little bit. Well, I can tell the minute it's high. Yeah. My ear starts ringing and they start feeling off. But one of the guys that works for me, his daughter's got really bad diabetes. She's had it since she was a baby. So they had like some amazing training at like Children's Hospital.
All right, folks, it's 1 minute to 10. Maybe we can get ready to sit down and get going here. I'll give you a few seconds to grab your chairs. Okay, that looks like it's close enough to me. I'll call the meeting to order at 9:59 and ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. From George, made, seconded. Any opposed? So, all in favor? Thank you. Yeah, I got that backwards again. Moving on. We have on our agenda a closed session. So the recommendation is that in accordance with section 91.J of the Community Charter, the board close the meeting to the public on the basis of information that is prohibited or information that, if it were presented in a document, would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Can I have a motion for that, to that effect, please? Made, seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. So we are in closed.
Just got to give Danny a second to close it online.
Thank you. Tell me when you're ready, Dan. Made, seconded. All those in favor? I'll take that as carried. So back to you.
Thank you, Director Taylor. We go into the Corporate Services Committee. We do have a proposed agenda before us. Just a note, mine is saying that the delegation has been canceled, so that's going to speed us up some, definitely. So there's just one item proposed for this one. So looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Great. I'm getting tongue-tied here. All those in favor was good. Any opposed? Seeing none, we're in session. And I'm going to go to the CAO for the public engagement portion of this. So, CAO.
Thank you, Chair. In this part of the meeting, the communications supervisor will be providing a presentation on public engagement. And we have a technical difficulty in that he's not here right now.
Okay.
So he is on his way.
He's on his way? Okay. Director Taylor, question?
Yeah, I'd just like to speak to the item B that we've missed today. I've sat through one of these sessions. I think they're worthwhile. And I think it's a good investment by the board to have this kind of training and to make it available to the community and to our residents within the community. We're in a period of change, and awareness is part of, maybe it's a first step. So I strongly recommend any opportunity to have this kind of a presentation.
Yeah, okay. I don't think it was canceled for any reason, but other than maybe they couldn't make it this time, but I'll ask Christy if she can explain that.
So the format that Anona Campy proposes did not necessarily match this, and we didn't determine that until the very last minute. So we will have her back. She will come more in a sort of a lunch series kind of thing, which we hope to have another few speakers again this year on. So no, we definitely will be seeing Anona. We're excited to do that. We'll just give her a little more time than, you know, the half hour and everything. So look forward to seeing her probably in spring.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll go back to the CAO or just directly to, okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Nice to be back. To the chair, I thought I would start with Indigenous relations, and I've just got a couple slides on that, and then we'll move into public engagement. As many of you know, in November 2019, the province of BC passed legislation to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. The UN Declaration forms the foundation for the province's work to advance reconciliation and enshrines in law the human rights of Indigenous peoples in this province. We know that the federal, provincial, and local governments across this province especially have committed to building strong government-to-government relationships with Indigenous peoples, advancing meaningful reconciliation, and upholding self-determination. Indigenous relations is not a file that local governments should be doing off the side of a desk, which sometimes happens. Building and maintaining relationships with Indigenous communities and leadership requires a commitment by elected officials and staff. Over the past few years, the RDOS Legislative Services Department, with support from the Communications Branch, has worked to establish Indigenous relations processes and protocols. Very quickly on that item, there is no set process for communicating with Indigenous communities, and when it happens off the side of someone's desk or in different formats, in different versions from different departments and people, it can cause problems. So being consistent is certainly, I believe, the goal. This includes providing educational workshops, which we have done and I heard mentioned earlier, for the board and for staff, supporting events like Powwow Between the Lakes, which happened this year, which was an amazing event, and will be on hiatus now until 2025 due to family protocols with the passing of Elder Grace Grey Eyes. And then also facilitating Indigenous community meetings. RDOS Communications has been working for a while on trying to put together a C2C event around the area, and it just hasn't happened. And at the end of the day, we've realized that sometimes you just have to go visit and stop by and speak to someone. And that has happened with the Osoyoos Indian Band, where a meeting was put together, as you all know, and it was more informal. And if that's the path in the short term, an informal meeting, then that's probably a good way to go. All right, I'm going to move on now to the overview for public engagement. I've been here before. I've gone a little bit more in depth. This won't take long, though, and there will be lots of time for Q&A or comments or discussion. I'm going to talk a bit about corporate communications, board support, department support, emergency operations, intergovernmental relations, which touches on Indigenous relations, a couple of quick project updates, and then the discussion. By the way, in case you missed it, my name is Eric Thompson. I'm the communications supervisor with the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen, and I've been with the organization for approximately 5 years. Still enjoying my time here, and it's nice to be back. Thank you. Let's go to corporate communications first. So RDOS Communications is responsible for all corporate communications, working directly with the 4 administrative departments: Legislative Services, Finance, Human Resources, and Information Services. Now, this includes managing shifting priorities and tight deadlines. I don't say that lightly. Things happen very quickly here at the RDOS, and there is a lot going on. Deadlines can often be tight, so we do have to be nimble. Communications and public engagement support during a referendum, alternative approval process, or election falls to communications. it sounds like a one line in a slideshow presentation, but that's actually a lot of work and it takes a lot of time, and getting it right is really important, because if there is a referendum or an AAP or an election going on, making sure that the public and everybody involved knows exactly what's going on is our job. And if we get that wrong, well, there isn't any room to get it wrong. We have to do our very best to make sure people have the information they need. Communications also works on internal and external communications. That includes preparing and reviewing reports, letters, and other documents. We take care of photography when required. We can also do in-house video production. And we coordinate and promote initiatives such as Local Government Awareness Week and Pride Month. The RDOS Intercom Committee is another area that communications works on, and we actually took a hiatus on the Intercom Committee. It started out several years ago as a web committee, and now we're focused more on just being a very useful working group to make sure that communications, both internally and externally, is handled properly. Communications takes care of the Community Champions Program, which is still a work in progress, and the idea here is that with volunteers in the community who want to share information on behalf of the organization, we rely on them to do so in different ways. And that might be going into one of their local Facebook groups where the RDOS wouldn't be a member of, and sharing information on behalf of the organization, posting an information release or poster at a notice board, that kind of thing. And communications facilitates and promotes the quality assurance surveys, which includes the citizen survey, which we're working on now. Whether it takes place this year or 2025, it looks like it may take place this year, and could be newer, bigger, and better. We also manage internal and external event calendars, which are vital to the success of the organization, because if we don't have the calendars right, then we can't get other things right. And we execute the facilities marketing plan, which we're working on for this year. Media relations. Where do I start? Well, it's an area that requires considerable staff time. I wrote here that RDOS Communications interacts with reporters and producers almost daily. In fact, I do. I mostly do that. And literally, usually once a day, we'll get some sort of an email or phone call, which is fine. It does take a lot of time, and doing it correctly and focusing on transparency and accountability is the key. And that's for all requests for information, whether it's from the public or the media. In this transparency, we feel, is how we can continue to build relationships with the media. We talk to reporters quite often. We know what they're looking for and what their deadlines are, and we'll be honest with them about what we can or cannot provide. As far as a comment, as you likely know, there are times due to privacy or legal reasons, the RDOS is not able to comment on certain matters, and we're just upfront with the media on why that is. Communications also monitors news reports and social media posts. This is especially important during emergencies such as floods and wildfires, especially if misinformation is published unknowingly, sometimes by the media or bloggers, or even the general public. It's important to respond to that. This is something I've said here before, and I'm going to say it again, that local governments cannot rely on the media alone to share timely and accurate information about RDOS programs, services, or issues. If people say, well, I only get my information about the RDOS from the media, well, that is, in my opinion, only one source, and it's important if they're looking for details, they can find it through the RDOS in a number of different ways, and that might be a phone call to the front office or a department, and hopefully in the coming year it'll be on the website a little easier to find, but we're doing our best to work with what we do have on that website to make sure people can find what they need. I should mention as well, if you do want to jump in and ask a question along the way, please don't hesitate.
I see a hand here just popped up when you said that. So, Director Holmes.
So, Eric, when you say you respond to misinformation in the media, how do you do that?
Well, depending on what it is. If it's a slight miscalculation, we'll call it on some facts, that's, I mean, it happens all the time. We can't correct every single story. We can't do their job for them, of course, but if we see something, and sometimes it's brought to our attention by one of the directors, that is something that is concerning, we'll literally just call up the reporter and say, by the way, did you know it was this? And I've spoken with a couple of media outlets where they had a minor mistake, but I've shared with them what it was, and they fixed it right away. And it works both ways. We have been contacted by some of the reporters saying, your information release had a typo. We said, well, thanks for fixing that for us, because we aim to be 100%, but we can't always be. So that's basically how we would do it. If it's on a blog or, often bloggers or some of these Facebook groups can just go down rabbit holes of misinformation. It's challenging to deal with that. So what the RDOS, from a communications perspective, might do is say, okay, we've now seen an avalanche of misinformation on a particular topic that could be swaying people in a negative way or in the wrong way. Not that we have an angle we want to share. It's just they have wrong information that's being published. Then we would, as an organization, put out an information release saying, if you're looking for correct information, here it is. I use roads often as an example. You can share with people that the RDOS is not responsible for roads many different times, many different ways. And people will say, okay, well, can you plow this, clear the snow from our road? And often people have said, you're just deferring. I don't care what local government, what level of government is responsible, just fix it. So our option then is to say, okay, we'll call the contractor. We'll do what we can as an organization then, if we have to try and move things along, rather than just say, it's not my department. Long answer. Thank you for that good question then.
Okay. Don't see any other hands, so carry on.
Okay, to the chair. Let's go to board support. This is a fluid situation. We're always happy to help, though, and this part of our job in communications, we work directly with electoral area directors on a range of issues, including facilitating media requests, preparing speaking notes, information releases, and fact sheets. We've also assisted with correspondence and research. This helps ensure consistent and accurate information is being shared from the organization. RDOS Communications currently has limited capacity to provide support for in-person and electronic meetings and events hosted by directors, especially on short notice, something we'd like to be able to help with. This support could include things like coordinating the venue, marketing the event, technical assistance for some of these electronic meetings, gathering and responding to feedback. So as it stands today, we certainly will do the best we can when those requests come in. I'll give you two examples of what we're working on right now is...
Quick interruption. I got a hand here.
Sorry.
Director Monteith, go ahead.
Through the chair, could you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because I'm struggling with exactly that. So just so the board's aware, I had an APC meeting and we moved virtually. I couldn't get a web link to host it. I literally was struggling. It was complete disaster trying to hold an APC meeting, which is a committee of the board, and it looked really bad. I ended up having to buy Zoom to use it. Like, I shouldn't have to do that. We have this, anyways, so please elaborate.
Can I ask did you reach out to staff?
Yes.
To ask for support? And what happened there, if I can ask?
Oh, offline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the challenge there again is just hours in the day, but I think ultimately the goal would be to help manage those situations. That's the goal. And how we do that is probably an offline discussion as well. But ideally, the communications section and staff across departments would be available to help facilitate some of those different meetings. I think it's a conversation that has to happen to establish what the threshold is, what we're trying to achieve as an organization. So I don't know that this is the venue for that. But I do appreciate your concerns, and certainly if there are ever any challenges like that, it would be nice to know. If you can contact myself, communications, I would love to hear that, and we'll certainly do what we can to try and rectify the situation, because rather than have someone float aimlessly and then have it not work or fail, I'd rather just know about it and see if we can fix it.
Okay, Director Taylor?
Yeah, I'd like to participate in that discussion as well. We've got some great technology and we've got great staff, but we have some not so savvy EA directors, and sometimes we get stuck in the middle that are trying to make this happen, and the wheels fall off, and it doesn't look good on all of us. So yeah, we'll take you up on that.
All right, Director Weep, go ahead.
So yeah, just a quick question, because having used WebEx and then Zoom was brought up, WebEx seems cumbersome, but my understanding is a platform like Zoom often isn't used by a government because it may or may not be as secure a platform as something like Zoom. Because the one thing that I've done outside of the political realm is I use Zoom for quite a lot of things. But I know politically that the security and some of those things might matter. So is that something pertaining to this particular issue, that we're limited as our options of how we could resolve that? Like, do we need to stay to a particular type of platform, or is there flexibility? Thank you.
To the chair.
Go ahead.
Not an expert on this. I do know that Danny Francisco is behind me, who is the manager, senior manager
I see him.
of Information Services. He may want to weigh in at this time if it's
He's
appropriate.
coming up to do that, I think, at the moment. Let him sit down beside you there. There's. Go ahead, Danny.
Hi. Things have changed a lot since COVID. Things have really started out with COVID. The entire industry changed when COVID took place. At the time of COVID, the only secured platform was WebEx. Zoom was not actually considered secure. Things have changed a lot because a lot of money has been pumped into Zoom and it's all over the place. The two top tier, I would say, in my opinion, of the services are WebEx and Zoom. What we are experiencing right now is a webinar, not an event. Most people are used to meeting events, which is a meeting like a Zoom meeting or a WebEx meeting. That is a different style of a meeting than what we are doing, which is called a webinar. The webinar platforms, I would say Zoom and WebEx, both are very capable platforms. Microsoft is not holding back. They are pursuing it very aggressively with Microsoft Teams. Teams is still used more for meetings, and that's a big distinction. The capabilities that you experience here are different from a webinar as opposed to a Zoom meeting. Zoom also has webinars. We don't use them a lot because unless you're using webinar features, then you're not needing those tools. But Zoom is a perfectly capable platform of doing that, and they now have dealt with a lot of the regulation issues that were first appeared in COVID. These are not simple choices to just move over. Microsoft is not holding back. They are moving forward with this and very aggressively trying to get at this market. In my opinion, they are not capable of it yet because of all the capabilities we have within Zoom and WebEx. That's kind of the summary of it. It's, it's a techno piece, but what we can is provide opportunities to the tools and utilize what they are. There's licensing charges, that's just a technicality to be figured out, but then those can be brought in. What I want to iterate is that hybrid meetings are not something easily done, as Eric can attest to. So if there's inclusion of technical pieces into a hybrid meeting, it's probably best to have more people there involved to do it, because it's not something I wouldn't even attempt it. To be a hosting and presenter and everything of a virtual hybrid meeting is a lot more involved. There's this expectation, I think, that, oh, it's web, it's online, we can just, one person can do it all. I would tend to disagree with the kind of complexities and issues that came in. Just as an example, side note, it turns out we were hitting 7 different data centers in this meeting this morning while Fiona was having some trouble. She was connected to Tokyo. So we literally had this meeting, and still is going on, spread across 7 data centers in the entire world. Not all the platforms have that capability to be able to analyze and see what's going on, but that requires people in the back end making this stuff work so it's seamless to the operators and the users of the system. These are where the complexity has gone from the COVID days and the hybrid world takes us to. So there's an involvement in staff, I think, to make these be as successful as they can be with what's out there with the controls we have, because we can't control the data centers of the world and the interconnections, but this is a point of information for you.
Okay. Did I see another hand from Director Monteith? Go ahead.
Through the chairs. So I guess I'm just looking for a solution. So staff don't attend APC meetings. So if I'm hosting an APC meeting by Zoom or WebEx, whatever, like I need that tool. And it's only fair that I get it from my host organization. So what is the solution?
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge we're going to have to discuss, I think, is to... Go ahead, Director Taylor.
Just in the vein of further discussion, if we can ensure that there is a simple solution that an APC chair or a director can facilitate, that would be welcome. So just let's have the chat.
Okay. Go ahead, CAO.
This is a problem that we're not going to solve today, but let's give it to me and let's come back with a solution. So I'll put that on my priority list, and Danny and I, I'm sure, can figure something out.
Okay.
And
Sounds
Eric.
good. Don't think I'm seeing any other hands, so back over to you, Eric.
All right, thank you to the chair. We'll wrap this up pretty quick because I know we have to wrap up by 11. Board support.
Actually, we're not under the gun here at the moment.
good.
We can't start our regular board meeting until 11:30, so.
Great. I'll talk slower.
I won't say waste it all, but you're not having to go too fast.
I've got lots of work to do, as you do. I'm all about brevity. I see we have some questions.
Go ahead, Director Gettins.
I just have to say this about this whole Zoom and staff not at APC and everything. I really struggle with the struggle that's happening here. And I live on, my whole life is on Zoom, so I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. But directors are not meant to be active in an APC. You're just there to observe and listen. So if we're asking directors to manage the technology in a meeting that they're only supposed to be observing, that's sending a very confusing message. And I believe that needs to stop. The solution is not anybody figuring out how to use Zoom. The solution is to have that be supported in a way that's meaningful, because I think that's too confusing for your citizens if you're struggling trying to get them to the meeting via Zoom and you're not even supposed to be participating in the meeting. So I just have to put that out. I think that should be a priority. I don't think that's right.
Yeah. Well, we're not technically, in most cases, we're not capable of all the technical challenges either. So continue on.
All right, to the chair, and as CAO said, something we'll discuss offline. I think it's an important and probably a in-depth conversation. And if Danny Francisco has challenges with some of the technology, I don't know what I can say about that. We have on the website, on the lower right portion, you'll see the Take Action tab, and I wanted to remind you of the electoral area news section. There is a web page for each electoral area of the rural areas, and the link will take you to a few different things. And one of them is, first of all, you'll see your photo there, the latest photo, but some documents, some resources, including the corporate identity guide and a few other things. And then when you click on the electoral area button, you will see, I've used area E as an example for this one. The director bio link is there, details on the director if they've chosen to have something there. Contact list and much more information. When an information release is posted under Hot Topics, we can select which electoral area will also receive it on this page. And as you can see there, the Naramata Water System information release was posted there, or in particular, that was a water advisory. So this page can be useful. Director Knodel recently prepared highlights of 2023, and he asked us to post it. So what we did was we posted it on his page there. I believe it was just under where the alternate director's name is. So we're trying to keep those pages consistent, but for current things that are pressing that you want people to know about, that's a good place to go. I don't believe a lot of people are aware of it. I don't think a lot of people necessarily use it, but it's something we're trying to promote more and more. So I wanted to mention that. And department support. This can take a while. Department support. So the communications section provides strategic guidance and support for all projects and initiatives with public engagement components within the regional district, which is pretty much everything that departments do. It includes working with senior managers and staff to facilitate the development and distribution of information and marketing material. Communications also provides guidance on gathering and managing feedback. This is something that we don't talk about a lot, but as an example, if you have a public meeting where the goal, for example, on, say, a park redevelopment is to gather feedback from the public, that process of how that information is gathered and what's done with it and how it's shared not only with the public but with the board is something that communications can support. We're not always asked to get involved, but more and more going forward, that's what we're really trying to do, is make sure that communications has some involvement in those types of processes so that they're conducted in a way that works for everyone. Communications has also been asked to review on occasion board reports and then identify items that may require proactive information releases, fact sheets, and website updates as well. So if the public's looking for information, it's important we are proactive on that and identify it ahead of time. You all know about the Emergency Operations Center. When it activates, things get very busy at the RDOS. Communications is responsible for staffing the information section within the EOC. And that includes the call center as well. Call centers are often activated early on in a major emergency so that any of the incoming phone calls can be managed in a way that really does help the public, because if we just rely on the information desk, the information section to answer the phones, it can be overwhelming. So we activate a call center when we can. The information section prepares and posts content. That includes evacuation alerts, orders, rescinds, and media advisories as well. And the information section facilitates the video briefings that you've probably seen and works closely with the media. Now, working closely with the media during an emergency means that can be anywhere from 4 in the morning for those in the east to close to midnight for the 11 o'clock late shows on the West Coast. So the media component can be very time consuming for the Emergency Operations Center. And to wrap up, just a couple of quick things. We talked earlier about intergovernmental relations, which includes Indigenous relations. That can include everything from correspondence to working on projects, meetings, issues, policy, research. And in order to provide adequate and effective board, event, and Indigenous and intergovernmental support, an additional resource would likely be required. Now, as you know right now, in the information section, or excuse me, in the communications section, we have a communication supervisor, myself, and we have 2 coordinators. We have a new coordinator who just replaced the previous one. Every time someone leaves the organization, as you heard in planning, there is a delay in getting back up to speed because we're now having to train someone new. So that retention for us in that area is really important. We're trying to be as effective as we can with the 3 people we have. And I know in speaking with our colleagues around the province, there are examples of how this can work. And one of them is RDEK, where they have a manager of communications and they have 2 coordinators and an admin assistant. And with that, they're able to provide the types of services we've been talking about here today. They can make sure that they touch everything that goes out of the organization, and they do. They actually take a look at everything. They don't leave it to chance that someone's going to post something on social media and it'll be okay. They make sure they look at everything. But that's sort of the top tier model. They've been around for 20 years with communications. Whereas we've talked to other regional districts who have 1 person, and they get the service accordingly. They really struggle to try and make sure that the board is supported, that the public has the information they need. Let's go to slide 13 and the budget. So budget 2024, as you know, the public engagement phase of the RDOS budget process will begin later this month. First reading of the draft budget is scheduled to take place during the January 18th board meeting, and that then activates the community consultation phase, which is considerable. So an online budget discussion via WebEx and YouTube will take place. We have PowerPoint presentations as well, and there are 16 of them. RDOS Regional Connections is being updated and will be updated as a source of information. There's a budget fact sheet that will be created, information releases throughout the process, and we'd invite you at this time to keep in mind that if you are hoping to host any in-person budget meetings in your community, to contact communications as soon as you can. We're really trying to avoid having, especially with our transition now from our manager of finance now becoming the CEO, and we've had some transition there. Having someone available to go out to communities, especially in the winter, for meetings where sometimes only 2 or 3 people attend isn't ideal, but I understand as well that people do want to host, directors do want to host those meetings. So let's have that conversation early as early as possible if we can, please. Hope I'm not overstepping my bounds by saying that, but the main thing is we've had previous times where we've had the senior manager of finance going out to communities in February in the snow, and again, only a couple of people attend. So trying to maximize how we can host those meetings would be ideal.
Makes sense. Director Monteith.
Through the chair, so we're not having public information meetings in communities? Is that what
No.
I'm hearing? Or,
No.
and are we booking that through communications or through finance?
Go ahead, CAO.
As far as the budget's concerned, any director that wants me to attend for budget discussion, I will go. And if you can book it through communications, they will then discuss it with me about what's available. But ultimately, you let me know. I can't obviously be at the 2 places at the same time, but if first come, first serve. So the answer to your question is yes, we'll make live presentations.
Okay.
That's what I meant to say. We're just hoping to help organize.
Yeah, I didn't take it that you were canceling them by any means. It was just organize them and try to keep it as safe as possible too for traveling. Not seeing any other hands. Anything further?
Yeah,
to
one
add?
last slide, and then we're done. I just wanted to provide a quick update on electoral area signage. The community notice board project, which I've mentioned before, is moving forward. Finance is currently working on a funding plan. We've heard from 5 electoral area directors that they would like 1 or more of these signs. Ideally, they would be located at a fire department, but that's not always possible. So there are a lot of moving parts, but we feel if this project comes together, it'll be a good start for having in-person information about the regional district and branding in place. The CAO has also talked about and has initiated a plan to establish signage in electoral areas that alerts people to the fact that they are in fact in the electoral area and in the RDOS. And this sign here, we're calling them community information notice boards or something like that, community notice boards, sorry. As you can see, would indicate which electoral area you're in. Some people don't know which electoral area they live in. They may have moved recently from a municipality. There's also an opportunity there, in addition to showing people the fire danger rating, but also putting posters in there for fire smart events or public events. And if this sign is located at a fire hall, it certainly helps, because we're hoping the fire department might be able to help put that sign up there, or it could be a staff person or a community champion. And with that, I will wrap it up. Thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to help.
Okay, Director Federico, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric, for that, and thank you for all your.
Maybe you're not. It's a amber light, not a green one.
There we
so
go.
There.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric, for all your help. I know every time I come to you with questions and concerns and whatnot, you're always very helpful. So thank you for that. In your presentation, though, you did not mention community services and recreation. So if you could touch upon the messaging that they get out and how it stays consistent with our brand, that would be wonderful.
One of the goals in the next short while, I would say in the next couple of weeks, is to meet individually with each department. Communications is still relatively new to the RDOS in the form that we have it. We've been growing and building, and there's a lot of things that need to happen. Among the priorities is meeting with each department to confirm how the information process works for that department. And recreation is fast moving. They've got lots of different touch points. And certainly, I think a meeting is due to confirm how posters are created, for example, and distributed and those kinds of things. So it is a work in progress, and it is a priority.
Okay. Director Monteith, then Taylor and Coyne.
Through the chair, I didn't see maybe it's upcoming, a touch point on the Voyant Alert. Is that coming up as a discussion, or?
I didn't put it in there at this point to the chair. It certainly is integral to everything that we do, and I just didn't put it in this particular presentation. We've talked about it before. Voyant Alert is part of that discussion with the departments, how it's used for water notifications, for example, how it might be used for any types of programs or services related to recreation, and certainly for emergencies. There is still, from what I've heard from the public, the feedback we've received is there is still, and this goes across the province, I've heard this from other communications professionals, that some people believe those notification systems are only for emergencies, and they're pretty much set on that. But that's not what they're necessarily designed for. They are designed as a way of getting information out to people so that it's proactive. We can't post something on the website and assume someone's just going to find it. So that is part of a larger process of continuing to educate the public, and again, working with departments to clarify and make sure we're consistent in how it's being used. And certainly if you have any feedback on how it is or isn't being used, it's always appreciated, and it'll only help us get better with use of that service.
Okay, follow up, go ahead.
And just to follow up, I'm still having sections of my electoral area struggle with using Voyant Alert. So Apex, Twin Lakes, that whole section, they're not getting alerts. And I've actually helped residents set it up properly. So I just, it just continues to be an issue with that whole little corridor. So I'm not sure what to do with that.
Well, I think the main thing for people to do is if they're having challenges with it is to contact the RDOS, to contact communications, and we'll make sure, and it could literally take a person going into their specific account and looking at their setup. The default, if you sign up today, is you get all the notifications, and some people don't want that, and they don't necessarily know how to manage it. So we've talked about hosting promoting over a period of time. It'd take a week where it's all about Voyant Alert, and we invite people to just call now, operators are standing by type of situation. And I think that's what we're going to need to do and continue to do.
Yeah. Probably a good idea. Director Taylor, Coyne, and then Roberts.
In addition to community services, just want to flag boil water orders. People can die. So we tend to take them as just, oh, here we go again. We have a lot of these. So some method of ensuring that that message is getting out every way possible. Second point, just site cleaning. And I appreciate that that's probably tied to HR and just not having enough hours in the day. But I know you guys do a lot of work trying to keep the site clean and current, but there's still some old information in my mind that's outdated, If you look at my area, Area D, you can come up with the boundary review study and you can come back with the Area DI split. And I'm just wondering how relevant that is, how long we keep stuff on. So.
Go ahead.
To the chair, are you referencing the website or Voyant Alert or both? Website? Okay. We'll double check that.
Okay. Director Coyne?
Yeah, I want to thank you, Eric, for the work you've been doing and your department's been doing. You and I communicate quite regularly because we seem to be in that neck of the woods. And I appreciate when we have to coordinate our messaging together. We do it through 3 or 4 times a year probably, and it's helpful. Especially when you're the guy that's the lead and you need somebody to bounce something off, and you're always available. So thank you for that, and keep up the good work. And I'm happy that you're part of our organization.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think we'd all echo that. Director Roberts.
Thank you to the chair. I have a couple of questions, and I'm assuming some of this would down the line in regards to staffing, maybe more pertinent. So my first question is in regards to putting together, let's say, information or putting out something from a department or program. Is the three, or is one of the three of you the ones that write out the communique? Or is it something that the department does and then you just kind of do a cursor, making sure that it nails in regards to messaging, the RDOS symbol, etc., and some stuff around English and how it's put together and spelled correct? Or is it something that you do a lot more of the composing?
Eric, can you start with that one?
To the chair. What communications has said to departments is if you would like an information release to go out, you can do one of two things. You can write it and we can edit and change the language to make it consistent with RDOS messaging. And when I say messaging, it's really just there's a way of speaking, and if all of a sudden an information release sounds completely different, then that's not really helpful as an organization. Or people can send us bullet points. Ideally, what would happen is a conversation starts before anything happens. So I had an email from one of the project coordinators, Tim, who sent me an email with 4 different projects that he's working on just to say, hey, these are 4 things that are coming up that will require public engagement, and let's have a meeting. So we're meeting tomorrow, and we're going to go through everything. We're going to come up with a communication plan for each of the items, and that would include information releases. We would ideally ask for notes on what the dates are, what the messaging is as far as what you want people to know, what they need to know, and then communications would work to put it together. That's actually easier. I use the chili analogy here. If someone makes chili and then asks us to come and take a look at it, it's hard to fix after the fact. and they don't want us to start putting spices in it. So ideally, we get the information, we put out an information release, and then a department isn't sitting trying to be an author, because that can be challenging. On occasion, we do have people write information releases, and they're sort of in the groove, and it works out well. But so, sorry, to answer your question shorter, it's we'll take the information in, create the information release or other material as required.
Okay, follow up to that, Director Roberts.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, because I'm just kind of moving. I got 3 items. That's the first. Second one, you were bringing up in regards to making sure that we have, things going out correct. And I'm wondering about dealing with like area directors. Like I have an Area G Facebook page. Now I struggle with managing it, and I'm wondering whether or not, for instance, if the regional district had its own page for each area, for like the director change in the future, et cetera, it automatically gets populated with the updates for that particular area. And then the area director can work with communications when they're putting things out on it. I'm wondering whether or not that's a tool, because again, then you become more the administrator of it, allowing the electoral area director to add to it, or because right now I have it as a page connected to my Facebook, and it's a bit of a struggle. So
thoughts?
To the chair, that sounds like a good offline discussion. Could take a long time. Ideally, what does happen with most local governments is that it's better to have one source of information where you can. If you have multiple, it can be difficult to keep up. It can be difficult to manage them. For electoral area directors to have their own Facebook page, that is, I think, kind of a gray area still. And certainly the RDOS can provide support where we can, but ideally it would be helpful to direct people to the main RDOS Facebook page, and then it's updated on a regular basis and is consistent. So individual Facebook pages, I believe, are a larger conversation.
Okay. Your third point, Director Roberts?
The third one, in regards to the communication boards, sorry, Eric, I haven't reached out to you because I was partly trying to think of how it would work in Area G. For instance, having like satellite communities very similar to Area I, and then one of those being like Headley that has its own fire brigade and local governance. And so trying to figure out what would be best, but I would definitely touch base on that. And sorry that I haven't as of yet. And thank you for all that you do.
Okay. Director Wiebe, go ahead.
If I can just kind of back up through the chair. There was a point during the fires, and I know there's a lot of things going on, but I happened to try to help somebody find the information they needed for where the ESS has been moved, and I couldn't find it. Turns out it was under hot topics, which seems a little ironic that we're in the middle of a fire and that's the category that we're looking under. It was just an observation. I mean, you guys do phenomenal work, but it was one, and we hadn't had releases yet. I knew there was a change. We hadn't expected the folks to turn up where they did, but when they did, I happened to be going by. I didn't want to leave people standing outside the building, but then it looked like I didn't know what I was doing, and again, there's an information part for me, but it was also something like that. It might have helped if there was right, once I knew to look under hot topics, that was fine, but if the general public isn't going to likely know that either, so that was one specific issue where we changed an ESS kind of in the middle of, there was, one, and then it needed to be adjusted. And I get that there's a lot of moving parts, but for, moving forward, kind of having that where even if it has a bubble or something that's a specific, right, rather than in a list of things that are pertinent, but something like an ESS or something that maybe in moving forward kind of have that clearly labeled. I don't know how, but that obviously that's what you do. So,
Eric?
To the chair, excellent point, because it's something that we're working on, and every year with the information section in the EOC, there are challenges like that where there's fast-moving information. On a personal note, as I mentioned before, I used to work in news, and I remember a news director, the late Clint Nickerson, once said, "Don't make people guess the news." So we want to actually make it easy for people to find things. So cases like that are a good example where we just need to do better. We have two websites. Excuse me, one is the EOC website, one is the main website. That in itself can be confusing for people. So we're really trying to make it so that if someone goes to either one of those websites during an emergency, the way the alerts and orders, because they're changing really quickly, and same thing with the ESS and reception centers, we're trying to find a better way to display that with the technology we have available, and it is absolutely a priority. So thank you for reminding us.
Okay. Don't believe I'm seeing any other hands. So thank you, Eric, for the presentation and also for the efforts and work that you're doing for us. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, I believe that completes the agenda. Looking for a motion to adjourn, moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. So we do have to wait until 11:30, which is the advertised time for our regular board meeting. So we've got a few minutes until then. Grab your coffees or whatever. Okay, folks, if we could get back to our seats, we will get started. And I'll ask Danny to get us back online and up and running.
Well, you'll get that before I do.
I've got a 3-year plan and they're not part of that.
It's on the wall. Here's your eviction date. You don't want my 3-year-old for a while?
We good to go, Danny? Thumbs up? All right, folks, we'll get started. I'll call the meeting to order. Looking for a motion to approve. Remember, there is one late item. And before we, oh gosh, first time in ages, we haven't got a consent agenda to deal with, so don't have to worry about that. Look for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved and seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? Motion carries. We go straight to Development Services. Item B1, CAO.
This is the development variance permit, and this application is seeking a variance to a minimum building width regulation that applies to the subject property in order to undertake construction of a small house. The recommendation is that the development variance permit number 2023-45 DVP to allow the construction of a single attachment dwelling at 75 Blacktail Road be approved. Staff's here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you for that. Director Bush, you're moving it for me. It's moved. Is there a seconder? Thank you. It's on the floor. Any discussion on this one? Seeing no hands, I would like to just make one comment myself, as this is in my area. If you read the report, it's kind of self-explanatory, but there was a lot of representations that were written in opposition to this, basically around the building scheme that originally went with this development. But that is not something that we, as the regional district, have anything to do with, nor can we enforce. So it's up to the landowner, property owner, what size of a home they want to put on it. In my view, that little bit of 36 centimeters or whatever it is, they could meet that by adding a little bit on, and I don't see that making it any better looking than what he's proposing. So I don't have any opposition to this at all. So, seeing no other hands, this is a rural vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Down to B2, temporary use in Area C, CAO.
Thank you, Chair. And this, as you stated, is temporary use application. The application is requested to follow following uses of the subject property for storage, outdoor storage, residential and commercial, residential use of one additional recreation vehicle, and the recommendation is that file number C 2022.022 remain active until July 4th, 2024, in order for the application to obtain necessary approvals from the provincial government. And again, staff's here to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Knodel for direction.
I'm going to move the administrative recommendation.
Okay, moved. Seconded, thank you. It's on the floor. Any discussion on this one? Don't look like I'm seeing any hands, so call the question. Again, rural vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. B3, official community plan and bylaw amendment in Area H, CAO.
Thank you. This application is seeking to amend the zoning of the subject property in order to allow a 1-lot and 2 remainder subdivision. And the recommended motion is that the electoral area H official community plan amendment bylaw 2497.16 2023 and the electoral area H zoning amendment bylaw 2498.27 2023 be read a third time. And staff's here again to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. And this one is from this morning's public hearing. Just so folks are aware of that, I'll go to Director Coyne. Direction.
I'd like to make the administrative recommendation, please.
Okay, you're moving it. Seeing hands for seconder, it's on the floor. Any discussion on this one? Not seeing any hands. Again, rural vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Over to B4, a petition to enter the service in Area I, CAO.
Thank you. The applicant has submitted a petition requesting for the regional district that seeks to remove the property at 2564 Green Lake Road, being Lot 1, Plan EEP 1591, District Lot 34S, from the Okanagan Falls Fire Service Area and to include the property in the Willowbrook Fire Service Area. And the recommended motion is that the Okanagan Falls Fire Protection Service Establishment Amendment Bylaw 1310.04, 2024, being a bylaw to reduce the service area, be read a first, second, and third time, and that the Willowbrook Fire Department Fire Suppression Local Service Establishment Bylaw 1388.04, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time.
Director Monteith.
Through the chair, I actually have a question first. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
So to staff, or through the chair to staff, I just want to make sure that the service area of the fire doesn't become choppy through there. Is that correct? That all properties were included, that we're not segregating property?
Staff?
Yes, that's correct. This property currently straddles the border between the two fire service areas, so it's just going from one into the other, and the boundary will move to the other side of the property.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just a second question.
Go ahead.
So I had a call from a couple neighbors in that area, just kind of questioning whether that was the extent that we could look at moving property from Okanagan Falls to Willowbrook, or is that, what is the service, what would be the appropriate service area? Is it, I guess the question was, is this the only property that it makes sense to move to from Okanagan Falls to Willowbrook, or is there others that should be, I guess, looking at that as well?
That's a question I can't answer, but
it's just.
Ms. Molden?
So that's definitely a conversation when you move properties from one service area to another. It's a conversation that needs to be had with the fire chiefs. That's the primary one, to ensure that it's the most effective and the fire department that they petition into can manage it best. So that's definitely a fire chief conversation with the community members or the group that may be interested. But you're right, it's important to make sure you maintain that contiguous border at all times. So, yeah.
Okay. So,
And I'll just note, sorry, Chair, to
Sure.
interrupt, this is a corporate vote too.
Yes.
Not a rural.
So I would make the administrative recommendation.
Okay, you're moving it. Director Knodel seconding it, I see. Any discussion on this one? CAO?
Thank you. Just to let the board know, even though the fire protection will change immediately and the two fire departments will coordinate that, the taxes still will remain the same until 2025.
Yeah, it's too late to get that changed, so. Okay, Director Knodel, question?
No, just for clarification to the board, the reason for this move is the hill that becomes a barrier in the winter for the OK Falls Fire Department. It's an onerous hill even in good weather, so it's kind of prompted a look at doing this. So that was the main driver. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, as this one is a corporate vote, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Down to Section C, Community Services, UBCM CEPF Emergency Support Services Grant, CAO.
Thank you. The request here is to secure provincial funding for emergency services for the region and support the continuation of support and coordination between the 8 ESS teams. And the administrative recommendation is that the regional district submit a joint application under 2024 UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Emergency Support and Service Equipment and Training Grant for $150,000 and manage the grant on behalf of the District of Summerland, Town of Osoyoos, Town of Princeton, and the Village of Karamias.
Okay, it's moved. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Any discussion on this one? Go ahead, Director Johansson, and then Monteith.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondering why the town of Oliver is not mentioned on there, or city of Penticton. I mean, if there's 8 ESS groups, just wanting some clarification on that.
CAO?
Okay, I don't have that answer, but I'll get back to you on that.
Maybe staff coming up?
All right.
I'm not sure which one of you, but one of you,
I actually
go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I brought Greg Bondrod, Emergency Program Coordinator, who has the background on that. He can provide some details.
Okay, go ahead, Greg.
Hi there, yeah, thank you. So through the chair to answer that question. So we provide the opportunity for everyone to come in on the grant. So I believe City of Penticton and Town of Oliver decided to do the grant on their own just to fit better in their strategic priorities.
Okay. Director Monteith?
And through the chair, I guess to the CAO, if we're considering doing something collaborative, is this part of that plan? Is that going to build that, I guess?
CAO?
This is one of many. We're going to be doing this more and more, but it's at the discretion of the member municipalities. If they want to join us, they will always be asked to participate.
Okay. Director Coyne?
Yeah, this isn't the first time we've done something like this. I think we've done it, what, 5 or 6 years or something like that in a row. So it's not something new, it's just something we do regularly, and I don't think Penticton has participated with this joint one in the past either, so.
Okay. Am I missing any other hands? Seeing none, we'll call the question, and again, a corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Down to C2, the Adria Tunnel Contract Change Order, CAO.
Thank you. The Regional District has been collaborating with local volunteer groups to reopen a historic Adria Tunnel on the KVR Trail. This is being funded through donations. There is a contract that we have been working with, and the board recommendation is that the board approve a change order to the agreement between the Regional District and TNA Rockworth Inc. for rehabilitation of Adria Tunnel in the amount of $150,000 plus applicable taxes.
Okay, direction from the board on this one. Director Fedrigo?
I'll move the administrative recommendation.
Mover, seconded, thank you. Any discussion? Don't think I'm seeing any hands. Again, corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Down to D, Legislative Services, the South Okanagan Conservation Fund, CAO.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose is to obtain approval of the Technical Advisory Committee recommendations for the projects to be funded as it was described to you. And the recommended motion is that the Board of Directors approve the Technical Advisory Committee recommendations for the South Okanagan Conservation Fund for the 2024 delivery projects in the amount of $212,450.25.
Okay, Director Taylor, you're moving that. Seconded, thank you. Discussion? Seeing no hands, again, a corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Over to D2. Oliver and Electoral Area C, Parks and Rec, CAO.
Thank you. This is to facilitate the transition of Parks and Recreation service provisions for the Oliver Parks and Recreation Society to the Town of Oliver. And the recommended motion is that the bylaw number 2702.01 being the bylaw to amend the service establishment bylaw for the Oliver/Electoral Area C Parks and Recreation services be read a first, second, and third time and be adopted. And that the terms of the references for the Oliver and District Recreation Advisory Committee be adopted.
Okay, direction on this one. Director Johansson is moving it?
I'll move it, yeah.
Okay, mover, and I see Director Knodel seconding. Any discussion on this? Quiet bunch today. Call the question. Corporate vote, all in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us down to CAO reports. Over to you, CAO.
Thank you. Just one quick thing. Item, the communications supervisor talked about having a survey for either 24 or 25. I can definitely say, yes, there'll be one in 24. It will be a scientific valid survey, and it will be by municipal areas and electoral areas, and it's going to be in-house. The member municipalities have been invited. So far, we've had interest from Penticton and Osoyoos. They will be talking to the respective councillors, and I'm sure that I'm seeing positive here for Karamias. And this is just, again, one of many where we are not just a regional district, we're a region, and we work together, and they will be invited in other areas.
Okay, good to know. Thank you for that. I thought I seen a hand, but maybe my eyes are catching movement that wasn't there. Down to other business, chair's report. Not much for me to report on over the holidays, so I go directly to director's motions, and we do have one of those. Miss Director Monteith.
Thank you. So maybe I will just sort of explain the recommendation. So I have met with staff and they have helped me get to this process. So to kind of maybe explain a bit about Apex. So the resort of Apex has a hotel structure that was built in 1994. Between 1994 and 2004, the resort went into bankruptcy. And at that time, the hotel structure, the units within the hotel were sold from commercial use to private. So it became residence. When the process of the sale happened, the suites were not allocated parking at that time. So the hotel and the resort were all one. When it moved from hotel through bankruptcy, privately sold, there was no assigned parking. So every time a resident goes through any building permit process or anything, they're hitting challenges with the parking issues. Even though they have access to the common parking lot and they have a shared agreement, it's a policy issue, right? So that led me to bring this motion forward in hopes that we can find a resolution that would, basically make what we have there conforming, because right now it's not. So yeah, that was.
Okay, so you putting this as a notice of motion, or do you want to make the motion and deal with it today?
I made the motion last meeting.
Okay.
So we'd be making that
Okay, so you're
recommendation
moving this
today.
one?
Yes, please.
Mover, is there a seconder for it? It's on the floor. Any discussion? Direct- The motion I'll ask Ms. Molden to read it out.
Sure. That RDOS staff bring forward zoning options to address the on-site vehicle parking requirements at 300 Stray Horse Road at Apex.
Okay, just so everybody's clear on what we're voting on, go ahead, Director Coyne.
So when it was commercial, would there not have already been a zone or parking, like part of that zoning? Like, I'm confused as to why there's no parking.
Director Monteith can probably clarify.
Yeah, so because it's a crown lease, right? So the resort held the crown lease. So when they sold the lots, there was no connection between the building, the suites, and the requirement for parking. So that mistake was made between 94 and 2004.
So is the parking lot crown lease or is it private property?
It's part of the resort crown lease. So the hotel structure itself has a small parking area beside the building, but it doesn't meet the major requirement for the hotel structure, for the units. So every time, go ahead.
Chris not here?
Well, I've been talking with Chris about this. He's well aware and
So can we zone a crown lease? Like, is that possible?
but we can look at the parking requirements for that building because the strata has an agreement with the resort to use the common parking area.
They'll just be bringing us some options as it is anyway. It's not making anything official, so we'll
just to
see what
follow up,
options are available.
Basically,
Go
we're
ahead.
looking at a way of figuring out to make the current structure compliant to what our rules are. And because the strata does not own the parking lot, they're not considering that in the process. It's complicated.
One of those things then.
Yeah.
Fell through the cracks during the bankruptcy part. So we've got it on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, again, this one would be corporate. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Down to board members' verbal updates. Anything to report? Director Federico.
I just want to give a shout out to a couple of key community volunteers who put together our second annual Naramata Polar Bear Dip. They raised over $6,000 for our volunteer fire department, for their society. And we had, I think we had over 100 people who actually went in the water. And we had probably about a couple hundred that were in attendance. So again, big shout out to our volunteers and our fire department.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly. Too cold for me, but well done. Director Gettins.
Thanks. I don't have an update, but I just wanted to clarify on the calendar. Thank you for this. That's super helpful. So the budget meetings aren't color-coded on here, and I heard today that the first one's on the 18th. Do we have the second and third reading scheduled?
CAO?
Yeah.
They're not for this.
They're not.
For next year.
Yeah, their schedule, first reading would be January 18th. And the goal, it would be the second meeting in February, only because I anticipate a lot of discussions between the first and second. So I would recommend the second meeting, or second adoption would be second meeting in February, and the first meeting in March would be third and adoption.
Okay, thanks so much.
Okay. Good to know. Any other verbal updates? On the screen, sorry, I couldn't see him waving at me. Go ahead, Director Coyne.
It's not really an update. I would just like to extend a huge thank you to Fiona and wish her the absolute best in her new endeavors. She has been absolutely amazing with all of the troubles and tribulations that we've had out here in the last year with the vacation rentals. And I hope that isn't why she's leaving, because I really appreciate all of the stuff that she's done for us. A big thank you.
All right, we'll make sure she hears that. Thanks, Director Coyne. Any other verbal updates? Seeing none. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and Happy New Year's to you all.
It won't be next meeting, we'll make up for it.
I know.
So, yeah.